Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. So, hope you're having a fine one here. Welcome to part 2 of the review, where we get into the nitty-gritty for all the, the long-term folks here that have seen this thing through thick and thin, and want to see what exactly changed, because, let me tell you right now, all them folks that were going and lamenting that, oh, it was just a simple port. Good lord, y'all are living in crazy town. Let me tell you what, this thing has changed from top to bottom in absolutely elegant ways. Oh, man, through and through and through and through, I just, like, every step of the way, I've just found something new to appreciate about this remake. And I want to point out, again, this isn't like, you know how before release we were thinking, like, oh, they just must have changed a few things. We just, just a couple extra pieces of armor here. The skills are just, they just got boiled down in 4 slots. No. Okay, so I'm assuming you already saw part 1 of the review, okay? So we already covered the fact that pretty much all your slots are in effect here. But I want to point out how deep it actually goes. See, one of those contentious things in the early part there was something along the lines of these automatics. Okay, these are actually pretty darn fantastic, I gotta say. So basically, the idea behind the automatics is that you have certain skills from before that will automatically trigger at the start of your turn. You can pick up a type of card that will increase the frequency of this happening, and then certain ones are activatable. So, for example, if I go to Sarah over here, she's still got her double, she's still got her tremendous, but every now and then Engulf will trigger, and she will get +3 range for that turn. Well, until the next ranged attack or spell or what have you. So, for example, when we get into the post-game stuff and we start finding, gear with spells attached to it and whatever else, they can just go ahead and combine that with Engulf as well. This has actually been really fun to screw around with, and I've barely scratched the surface here. Like, for example, most of the spellcasters I have are running around Caldias that will have one use of Charm on there, as well as being able to parry all of a sudden. So, your spellcasters are able to parry, they're able to wade, as you can see up there on the top right, because you can waterproof your robes as well. So, for example, you have something like being able to combine Engulf with a Caldia. So, basically, this thing goes from a absolutely just top-tiered, just before it was a slight boost in very situational cases to your early game. In this case, it's essentially one of the top-tier defensive items for your spellcasters. Not only allowing you to parry, but also usually those spellcasters will have a decent mind score, meaning that that charm will have a decent chance of landing. It is a very, very effective oh crap move in a lot of situations. Like most of the time, I've been carrying that on almost every spellcaster that I have in lieu of a shield, basically, in order to just kind of suddenly be like, oh, I want that one unit over there to not be a problem. Their turn is coming up, just like pew pew with the Caldia. There we go, problem solved. True, these odds are sometimes in the 40 to 50% range, but again, if you have a cleric that's got nothing better to do that round, you might as well. Now, I should mention, in terms of like stacking up cards, do you really need to do that? No. So the cards, look, I can go into the exact specifics over, when and how certain things will matter. Like, for example, with Strengthen, Olivia picking up Strengthen here will do absolutely jack for her, whereas somebody like Canopus picking it up with his two-hander Buccaneer build right now, he would absolutely shred with it. So all the cards are a lot more situational than they seem. You've got your skill-boosting ones, which will, for example, allow Mother's Mercy to trigger constantly, or have Mother's Blessing to suddenly double her healing, or suddenly make Meditate happen all the time. All of these skills are not a one-size-fits-all situation. So, for example, Meditate triggers pretty constantly all on its own. Mother's Blessing and Mother's Mercy, though, are fairly uncommon. So every skill feels like they were playtesting this for years, just trying to get them exactly where they need to be. Like, for example, something like Velocity Shift, when it ends up automatically triggering at the start of his turn, this dude is basically going and boosting the entire team. It doesn't trigger as often as, for example, something like Paralysis Blade, which is going to be pretty much on all the time. Most of your instills are basically just permanently on. But for example, with Velocity Shift, you pick up a few cards with this guy, and suddenly he's boosting everyone's speed constantly. It's great. It feels fantastic. Again, every time you have that little thing going in your head of like, oh, this is gonna be broken, I knew they overlooked this. No. Take a step back. Appreciate that these folks knew what they were doing. This whole thing was made with an unreasonable amount of attention to detail. It's fantastic. Just everything that you've thought of, assume they've already thought of it. Like I covered in an earlier video, the fact that you can shield bash somebody into a pincer, which will then carry over the knockback from that shield bash and then knock that unit forward, which is hilarious because there's certain other situations, like for example, where you can still shield bash a unit into a pincer one tile away, but then also at the same time you can go and combine that with something like a dragoon and have them pincer in, like let's say you have them pincer in a regular spear attack plus a pike attack behind them, plus have them counter and then essentially counter on top of that. You can get absolutely ridiculous with the, like, you can literally stack up 3 spear units behind a guy. Like, you can have a regular spear, a longer range regular spear, and then a pike behind them. You can stack all these guys up. You can attack with a pike in the first place. First person counters, second one counters, then all 3 of them just stack up their pincer attacks on top of this. You can get hilarious with this crap, and I love it for that. And bear in mind, all classes that you were wondering if they made them good. Oh yeah, they made them fantastic. Like, starting with the Swordmasters, they are an absolutely top-tier frontliner unit again. Again, probably best example is just think about how good they were in Knight of Lotus. There you go. They're suddenly throwing out good buffs, they're throwing out good debuffs, and they're throwing out solid damage left, right, and center. They feel like they're absolute, I mean, they feel competent in how they are. But wait a minute, look over here. Preempt is an automatic. Does that mean you can't do the automatic knockback anymore? No, they thought about that too. They gave them the guaranteed hit and crit move that the warriors get, and essentially that allows them to preempt into a crit for a guaranteed knockback. You can also combine that with Mind's Eye at the same time, so you can have a guaranteed dodge plus a preempt plus a crit. Plus, if you wanted, you can put Mighty Strike in there as well. Like, you can just stack all this stuff up. There's only technically, less skills in a lot of situations. There's more useful skills. The passives are... There's definitely a lot less passives. Screw the passives. But there's a lot more automatics, there's a lot more little things. Now, let me say right now, there is one thing that I'm fairly certain will be different as of tomorrow. So when this review comes out, I guarantee there will probably be a day 1 patch that fixes the fact that there don't seem to be as many resists right now, and many of those resists seem to be disappearing on a unit that happens to be getting them. By the way, ignore the fact that I accidentally gave a female unit a male unit name. I was really tired when I recruited this Necromancer, and I was looking at them and was like, wait a minute, this kind of looks like the lead singer from Blind Guardian. Anyway, I was really feeling brain dead that day, but anyway, so for example, like if we look at the Necromancer here, they still got Master Undead, they still got Animate Dead, they still got Consecrate Dead, they still got Condemn, which is interesting, because again, this is another sign to me that there's going to be more multiplayer stuff or something at some point, because there has not really been a reason to use Condemn as of yet. So this is telling me that there's going to be something for this down the line. I mean, I'm, again, 70 plus hours into this particular save file, but I'm over 100 hours plus into just testing this game in different versions and whatever else, and there's more than I can reasonably get to in a month. I mean, again, this is like knowing the ins and outs of this thing left, right, and center. There's just more than I can literally get to, which is, I'm assuming, why Matsuno was going and covering things like relics, which, by the way, also are acting a little funny on my version. I'm assuming this is, again, going to be fixed, because I've, for example, picked up 4 different dragon scales, which it seems like they've gone down the One Vision route as well, where they might be unique, but I only have 1 that's actually available, and I didn't seem to get any money from them. Again, the way it's supposed to work is that you can pick up duplicates of uniques, but then you basically take those uniques and you combine them with different flavors, which, like, for example, like this initial dragon scale by itself isn't really too much of a difference from the heater +1, which, by the way, on that note, let me cover shields real quick. So shields were something that were strictly a defensive option in the PSP version. They're far more offensive in this version. As far as I can tell, I believe they might do a percentage of HP, actually, because I've noticed where, like, this guy can easily throw out 300s on heavy tanky units. Damage threshold doesn't really seem to apply, but I believe what it's doing is that it's doing a percentage plus the attack value on the shield, scaling off strength, I think. Again, just leave it to the modders to go figure all this stuff out on the back end. But that's what it feels like it's doing to me. But yeah, so as of right now, I know for, like, I'm positive there's no possible way that, like, from what we've seen on Matsuno's, stream and things like that, they've definitely got a slightly updated version. So, technically speaking, there have been two changes to the one that I'm playing here. But yeah, so relics are supposed to be something that you're supposed to be able to combine. But anyway, let's get back to the other stuff here. Certain concepts ended up making a comeback from the SNES version, like, for example, the Medicine Griffin here. So this is Griffiths 1. I specifically changed him into lightning, not because he actually scales off lightning, which it's interesting because you can still get a physical damage bonus by switching out some of your neutral units to just kind of varied elements to let them take advantage of those weaknesses every now and then. But I just figured, you know what, he probably strikes like lightning, so we're just going to go all lightning on him. In fact, you may notice a lot of... well, these guys are all just fodder for exactly you know what. But you may notice a lot of my team is very heavily leaning towards lightning. I mean, I just picked it right off the get-go because, cool robot horse, but the fact that, this ended up just synergizing perfectly well with, like, I wanted a spear unit denim, but we got synergies coming back from the PSP version. Like, for example, I got my Scorpion, except this time it actually manages to last far longer than the original Scorpion. It's not glancing off armor in the end game. Actually, just weapons in general feel like they've been given a lot tighter balance, so you can make certain things last longer. So, for example, I got this lady over here rocking Vigorous Attack, which gives a 100% hit chance to all melee things, as well as secondary chance, meaning that while the Scorpion's actual poison chance is relatively low, he stands next to her, gets this Vigorous, suddenly it's guaranteed. And bear in mind, again, you can combine, Vigorous, Double, and Mighty, but why would you combine that? That's 200% hit chances, because Vigorous also became Overpower. So Overpower just was a thing that allowed you to get past save rolls before. Now instead, it's just part of Vigorous, which feels fantastic. It means that suddenly you have those really, like, nice feeling moments of, like, I know for a fact I'm going to be able to push past this line. They're not going to parry this. It's just absolutely great. Anyway, so from there, we've got a few other things as well. Like I mentioned before, you can stack things. So, for example, Beast Bane and Beast Slayer, you can absolutely double up on your anti-unit abilities. This time around, there are no racial abilities. Those are just basically worked into skills. So, like, your skills are what would more or less be the equivalent of combining your racials, augs, and weapons into one thing. This is really, really nice, by the way. I know it feels weird to wrap your head around at first, okay? Because I had a hard time kind of mentally parsing this, but it just sort of becomes another thing in the background once you get used to it. But basically, the way that it goes is that that you can go and you can just quickly pivot between different types of things. So, like, if you forgot to train an augment in the PSP version, or you forgot to train a racial in the endgame, you might be potentially running into a bit of an issue, but this way you constantly just have your skills always getting training up. They're constantly getting better, they're constantly improving. It just feels really good. So that's always been nice. Actually, this charm thing has been really, really good too. So if at any point, like, you just kind of get these for doing cool stuff in the background, or a lot of times it's just passive stuff. Like, hey, did you pick up a buff card? Fantastic. Just go ahead and have some charms. What the hell? It just, like, it feels very solid. It feels very freeform. I was really worried that this would turn into, like, a Pokemon Go type situation, but really this is just a hold on, I forgot to do something, screw it, let's just go ahead and get it done kind of situation. So, like, you forgot to level up before the fight, screw it, just throw some charms at them. I mean, I've been getting them like candy, so leveling up in the early game matters a bit more in terms of going and throwing somebody through training. Since Chapter 3, I haven't really needed to do that because you get these, leftover experience charms for friggin' everything, and as you can tell, this team is friggin' ginormous, so I think you'll be fine in terms of not bothering with all that. Again, it's just like a fun little immersion thing in the early game, and then it just kind of respects your time. It's like, okay, fine, just go for it, whatever. Another cool thing that they fixed from the PSP version You can just use Fusils on Canopus right off the bat. You don't have to go through the absolutely asinine 100-plus battle situation to get him to figure out how to pull a trigger. So that's thankfully dealt with. In fact, why do I have Speedstar on him instead of Pincer? Yeah, we'll just go put Pincer on there. Another thing that got a little bit overlooked in the previous kind of intro videos is that Pincer actually does rank up as levels go up. So, for example, Berserkers are pretty much the premier Pincer users. As you can tell right here, they actually will do more damage with a Pincer than they would with a regular attack. They're already up to rank 4. So that's really good there. So it just kind of keeps them relevant even when you don't want an AoE. Like, personally, I haven't been using my Berserkers very much, not because they aren't awesome, but just simply because, you know, I've been trying to get to everything, and I'm pretty sure I get the idea of, you know, muscly dude hit thing real good. But I know when I'm actually going down and starting to not just explore mechanics, I know I'm definitely going to be using Berserkers more. Let's see. Other questions that people had were in regards to Princess, like how they improved this. Again, I'm really hoping that folks that have been around a while get the general idea that this is for the long-timers, but if you were to get a hold of this class, just know that, man, I love how they changed this, okay? This is going to seem egregiously oddly specific for those that don't know. But in the PSP version, when you unlocked Princess, she refused to use the Lombardia, presumably due to the story behind it. But she also did not match the Lombardia in any way. It was just a little extra thing. In this version, she specifically was not only given the means to use it, her voice line actually conveys conveys that whole scene quite a bit better, but she also has a matching element for it. So I feel like this was just a interesting little tonal shift, but man, I love this right here. Folks that were wondering if you could combine parry and deflect, and as well as counter, you know, like, oh no, my options. Yeah, you sure can. You just stack the two right on top of another. You know, it's good stuff. So basically, in most situations, like we were thinking about this way too simply. Like, we were thinking, oh, put 2 stabs on there for +6 range. No, you combine the staff plus you combine engulf. That's how you get your +6 range, and this isn't even where it maxes out. We were thinking way too simply on this. But yeah, there's a lot of these like little combinations, especially as you start going on, you start seeing more and more combinations, which actually gets me over to crafting. Now, I know this is going to seem like a bit of a haphazard ramble kind of situation, only because it kind of is. But if we can take a quick peek at the shop, if we go over to crafting, in terms of how they actually ended up thinking through all this stuff, any piece of equipment or whatever else that you wanted to upgrade, you just go and upgrade from the shop. They're like, oh, you have it equipped? Okay, here's all the people that have it. And then we just go ahead and upgrade it right there, and there we go. You don't have to re-equip it, you don't have to redo any of that stuff, it's just there. But if you're wondering, wait, doesn't this kind of invalidate a lot of things with going through all this? No. Like, for example, a lot of this stuff will just work differently. So, for example, like right here, with these, you still require the, you know, respective components, but like right here, Ring of the Horde, like I can make a few of these, go ahead and make those right there. But I can't make Ring of the Horde +1 until I have those made, because technically you can't buy that, you can just make it. It would be too many extra steps, so for example, you would still have to go and manually make sure that you have the original of that item before going and, you know, going for it this way. So I did end up picking up these earrings, by the way, and yes, they do still have skill bonuses on them, but we have noticed from a few things that Mitsuno has put out, actually, that yeah, this actually goes way deeper than this. There's actually a lot more background stuff, so you potentially can stack up to, like, I think the maximum we've seen so far is like +80 skill on certain weapons, so you can like more than double the natural maximum. So that is utter insanity. But additionally, I may notice a lot of these bits of equipment have actually been changed a bit. So, for example, before the skill necklaces, these used to give you like 40% damage resistance against everything. So a little bit busted. But yeah, now they just they give you the skill bonus, and then you go and you get these bonuses right here. But you may have noticed something along the way. And by the way, I know I'm just branching off into different tangents. That is the point of this video, just to give you an idea of how much they've changed, okay? So like, let's say, for example, right here, you know, fire crystals. Wait a minute, didn't you get that off of Codex of Gems before? Well, technically, yes, but also no. So, before then, you used to be able to craft crystals, but it was always weird that you would be able to just find crystals as a, seemingly rare drop in a lot of situations, but you weren't actually able to, to go through and, there really was no point to it. You could just essentially go over to, the shop, just make them for next to nothing, and who cares about the rest? Well, in this one, you still get those things as a considerable drop, but instead you end up seeing a situation like right here, where you get them as your drop, but you end up having a limited amount of crystals available. Balance-wise, this is actually pretty fascinating, because effectively this means that that you're able to you have these very limited options for some of your super endgame gear and whatever else. Like, for example, in PSP, something like the Ice Sword or the Ice Blade, whatever, was something that you would just be able to make for nothing. It was basically free, whereas in this one, you do actually have to make that choice over whether you can spend the limited amount of crystals that you got there in order to make an elemental version of something. So that part is very solid. They've seemingly thought all of this stuff through, which is bizarre because it actually then gets me over to Beast Tamers, funnily enough. Now, I was going to show you a different Beast Tamer, Mr. Voltaire. Unfortunately, in the process of making this whole thing, he ended up running into a little bit of an accident and finding himself at the bottom of a ravine due to a dragon that he was trying to recruit in order to get Deneb. So anyway, we're going to go with Mr. Birdmod here instead. So, effectively, they are still the thrown weapon specialist. However, you may have noticed up to this point, at least so far, there don't seem to be thrown weapons. That's weird. Okay, whatever. But then if we go over here, they start off with the lobber, and they have shots. So the shots were previously a sort of flashbang type thing in the PSP version, mainly used for cherry tapping stuff because they were exclusively non-fatal. It was a bit of a weird time as far as that goes. Also, apparently, he ended up taking... Oh, there we go. No, we have one left. So, first of all, they fixed shots. Simply put, you can have a variety if you want to take advantage of elemental weaknesses, which don't matter. I would say elemental weakness-wise, this kind of scales as the game goes on, but we're talking anywhere like 30 to 100 damage, whatever, on the basic end. But then if you get more intense with it, you can get several hundreds in terms of difference going. This is all situational, and the best way that I can put it is, as always, as it always has been with this game, don't worry too much about the math. Basically, what you need to know is that they will do a moderate amount of damage, roughly equivalent to a spell AoE, but at the same time, they will scale off your physical strength. So, for example, as you end up getting, let's say you pick up some Fizz Up cards, you will be able to do more with these shots. This ends up combining pretty well with anything else that the Beast Tamer happens to be doing. So, basically, it gives you a limited AoE decent damage option that can potentially go up as the fight goes on, but the synergy between how the Beast Tamer functions and how the shots end up working is absolutely sublime. It's again, every part of this remake just feels like they have taken exactly what needed to be there and just put it in. It is exactly how I would want this to work, and technically speaking, it functions the same role as the thrown weapons did in the original, except now you can, for example, have a thrown weapon while still having your spiked laurel or whatever else. Other interesting thing, though, because I know, the usual, oh no, my options off in the background, I don't actually know that there are no thrown weapons. Why do I say this? Well, if we look through all this stuff, we can see that there's a lot of cases where items just keep getting better. They keep adding new stuff, and certain things that had a iconic role, for example, are still going to be there. So like the Scorpion will, still have its poison +1. Something like a lot of the Bulger equipment will still have its silence effect on there. Something like a stun on the Iron Fan or the use of a charm on the Caldia, all well and good. But you may notice that, there's certain things that are not quite there. So I was talking earlier about those shields. So shields are, technically more of a defensive option, but they still require the use of those same reagents to give them their previous immunities. Now, there are no immunities on these starter shields. However, we have seen that, there's different colors on different things. So, for example, if I were to go over to these right here, we can see that, oh yeah, there's a specific different coloration for the Mend +2, or this Magic +2 over here. And there's technically a purple version on here as well. there's these different denotations of different rarities, and I have absolutely nothing telling me that this isn't suddenly gonna get some orange coloration on it and give me a +2 layer of all of this stuff. In fact, I was originally going to, to just complete the game and get my my No Chariots title, and then I realized technically the title itself would be a bit of a spoiler, and I'm not allowed to do that. So instead, we're just gonna have it like this here. So also know that as far as different updates to like the talk section and things like that, they've seemingly gone and added new sections to pretty much everything. There's little bits and pieces here and there that just add new stuff. Like for example, if we go down to one of the earlier ones, like let's say, where is he? I'm looking for the like the first boss guy. But you know, as always, everybody's got all of their different stuff going on. But like, let's say Swordfighter Brezen was always a bit of a meme because he, he has a hammer. He's pictured with an axe, but he's Swordfighter Brezen. But yeah, they gave him more of a backstory, explaining that he's just basically a duelist in his free time, that kind of stuff. They give you even more backgrounds on all of these characters. Like it feels like all of them have at least a couple new lines across the board, so that's been pretty interesting to just kind of go through. Title-wise, we already covered that you basically can just pick whatever title you want. So like say at one point I'd gone through the Thunder Temple because I was looking to test out oracles. Then again, just kind of ran short on time, so I'd be able to switch over to Slayer of the Lightning Watch there. So you can just do that as you will. But in terms of just like cool stuff you can do with units here, you may notice books. Like I just got the first book towards the tail end of Chapter 4. Okay, this is telling me the books are basically going to be like a post-game thing. Okay, so they start off with range +3. Again, Bibliona Tomie is something that you would be able to pick up a decent bit earlier in the base game, but here we go. They're right at the very end, and you can actually do cool things like this due to the way that the school system, due to the way that the skill system is handled, wherein you can still keep your original weapon skill that you were good with until this one ends up improving. It will always train all of them, but it will only make use of the highest one that you have available. So if you want to train somebody up doing a particular thing, this is a nice way to do it. If you have like a spellcaster or something like that, you can still keep training all those skills up. So let's see, what else do we want to go here? So there's also, again, just more little skills that were added all over the place, just as fun little nods. Like, for example, with the ninja here, I noticed that, yeah, they've got just a smoke screen that will do false strike on units that are nearby. Is it as good as a one vision Torinico bomb? No, it's not as useful as that, but it's still pretty good to see units getting false strike. Because false strike plus dodge suddenly matters a lot more when everybody's accuracy is dramatically higher, so that's pretty good there. Stuff like Benum and Envenom, as always, you can combine them, despite the fact, like, this is another one of those, like, little things that I know for a fact will probably be corrected in the Day 1 patch, but whoever was writing the description just wrote down that it's only for melee weapons. Oh no, it's for all weapons that they're carrying. So, for example, this guy will essentially, at the start of his turn, just alternate between Benum and Envenom and essentially combine that with the silence on his bow. So I have my old Trickshot Archer right here. I was able to do all that stuff pretty darn well. Additionally, having something like Steel Stance activate means that he suddenly can push forward a turn, but you can't exactly cheese this to have permanent Steel Stance. It just feels very, very solid how they handled all the balance here. In fact, it's hilarious to me that something like Princess's Whim doesn't suck this time. She still calls it out every single time, but it doesn't suck. You don't have to train it for hours on end to actually have it do its actual result there, so that feels great. When it comes to this counter effect, it will still use the first weapon that you have on hand. So, for example, if you have a one-handed counter option, but you wanted to, I don't know, just have her stab with a knife instead. Do you notice this little detail, by the way? That she can actually properly use knives this time around. So that's all well and good. As far as the other one, I have not found it yet. I'm assuming I probably would have in the going through Hanging Gardens, but either way, the other option is not quite there yet. But I would be shocked if it's not just an extra thing that happens to be in a certain fight that's in there. Actually, on that note, like I mentioned before release, that there would be those cases. that I'm positive that they will just use this bonus objective system as a little bit of an extra cookie for using people in the right circumstances. So, for example, one of the cases where she would have had a scene, it specifically said, "Hey, look, we'll give you this, priest class mark if you were to just put her in here. Just, just a bit of a thought." And yeah, sure enough, she had an extra talking scene, and she got her. She got an extra of her priest mark there. So it's just nice little stuff like that. Or for example, you go through Hanging Gardens, and they're like, "Hey, if you were to find, I don't know, one door, and maybe if you were to find another door, we'll give you a little cookie." So that kind of stuff is great. It just gives you a hint that that, hey, there's secret doors here. Hey, this person might have some dialogue here. It doesn't directly spell out exactly what's going on, but it does have those moments where it's like, hey, maybe you have a dragoon right here that wants to fight this ninja. Just, it could be a handy thing, you just got your first dragoon. I'm just throwing it out there. We'll give you some free experience for it. And it's, it just feels like they're always off in the background, just like nudging along like a caring parent. It's wonderful. And I think probably my favorite example so far in terms of, just how much they knew as far as the memes for this game went, like how clearly they deep dove into how the community handled a lot of characters or whatever else. Like, Hobram is one of those cases of a character that it's just objectively funny to give him a rifle and tell him to go be your team sniper. It's just, dude's blind, here you go, have this crazy loud gun and go shoot at something at a long distance. But he's known for being a sword master. And what exactly can the Fusilier do this time? Oh, they can preempt with a gun. Now, this one, I'm not actually sure how this works, because technically, in its current version, and again, day one patch type stuff, I would assume that they've already fixed this, but it says that it applies to melee, but it technically triggers only for ranged attacks. I'm not sure which one's the intended version, but I'm just throwing this out there. Whichever version it ends up being, both versions are awesome in my book, because if there's a, preempt, like just Indiana Jones thing, like, here, I got my sword, well, I got this gun kind of thing, that'd be pretty awesome. But on the flip side, just seeing this guy counter snipe archers is hilarious, especially the fact that like a lot of times he will be specifically targeted by archers, and if you can combine that with sharpshoot, you basically preempt sharpshoot, an archer goes to take a shot, he does the sharpshoot, the arrow misses. Like, dude, that is so legit. It's hilarious. Not to mention that these guys can also use things like orbs and whatever else, as well as shots with their lobber. So if you like the one vision grenadier thing, then there you go. You got that here as well. So like it just feels like every single new thing that I find, it's just like, oh, surely they didn't think of this. Oh yeah, they sure did. It's wonderful as far as that goes. Like, again, the fact that I can just sit here and ramble about just this screen alone for potentially hours. If my voice wasn't getting hoarse from the fact that it's getting dry outside, that's something else. Like, okay, let's take for a second the fact that finishers in many ways can be seen as exemplifying competitive Pokemon logic, okay? Technically, the PSP version already kind of sort of did this, alright? It already had a whole bunch of cases where you would have stuff under very niche circumstances, and if anybody had actually played the multiplayer on that, it would have been fascinating. But in, for example, this case right here, like, this guy's a wind element, but he's got a team that's primarily going for lightning. I noticed this when going over different skills. It's like, well, it would be really darn cool to have a situation where if, for example, we're stacking Prevailing Element really good, he can pivot into a Lightning Strike, get a little bit of bonus off that, but if he's off by himself at the start of a match, the extra range that they've given to Cyclone Saber can combine with his natural element, and potentially exploit Earth weaknesses at the same time. But at the same time, if he wants the cheap option, he could always still just go for the Sonic here, just in case Lightning is, for example, getting potentially nullified by a Prevailing Earth element or something. So it's just like all these little considerations that were background mechanics get brought to the forefront, and it feels so nice to see, I haven't really maxed out anything here. I stayed at level 36 for the longest time. That's why the majority of the team is that way. Just because I was trying to, get Secrets of the Master, was trying to go for all this other stuff, ran into some, pre-release, oh shoot, we did a whoopsie type moments. But either way, it's been an absolute blast. Like, honestly, even if those things don't get fixed, it's just an absolute gem of a thing so far. It's been amazing to see things that I never, ever, ever would have seen considered actually playing a part. Like, it's it's fantastic to see these situations like, you see she doesn't have a sword skill. She doesn't need the sword skill to make the Lombardian not suck. All weapons are just better right off the get. Just like the overall interactions between units and weapons feel as if it was the SNES version, but they took the complications and the overall depth of the PSP version and slapped it in there. They basically combined the best of all worlds here. So yeah, for example, something like Azelston right here, technically the old like pistol and sword pirate build, wonderful. He does fantastically in his little fight there. But then I noticed, hey, you can technically stack parry 1 and parry 2 at the same time. I don't know if it fully stacks up to a 3 or if it rolls for each separately, but dang it, I'm gonna try. So, you know, that was fun to have there, but he's not losing on too much damage by just having a dagger instead of a sword. So it's so nice, you know? And again, a lot of this feels like it's giving older weapons just more of a thing, so to speak. Like, for example, right here, it's interesting that if he were to just simply have 2 swords, it wouldn't stack the 2, but if he has daggers, he's using 2 different versions of that parry, then he's able to stack them up one on top of another. Wait, is that correct? Let me double check that real quick. So if he goes for, like, let's say the parry 1 on this thing. Oh, okay, it does actually put it back. That's my bad. Whatever. Okay, either way. Point being, this combination would be better anyway, because then he's got 2 that stun, and he's technically got 2 different versions of parry. I don't know how accurate that is, in terms of everything, but I like to think that I'm gaming the system, and you know what, I have nothing to prove otherwise, so we'll just wait until the modders end up fully explaining all this stuff. Another thing, equipment that was previously more annoying to get a hold of, I feel like has been dropping more frequently. It just feels, again, like they playtested this so thoroughly that everything is exactly how you want it. As far as I can tell, Deneb's recruit requirements are the same, but due to the fact that Beast Tamers aren't outright squishy, due to the fact that you don't need to be training, like, for example, racial skills in order to get decent recruit odds, I feel like I've been able to consistently get them to about 40%. Just off the skill itself, feels fantastic. If you're curious about whether the Bewitch mind control glitch, it's not a glitch, it's more of an exploit, still works. As far as I can tell, like, I think it was this guy, right? Actually, no, it was the guy that killed my other Beast Tamer. As far as I can tell, the new, like, they combined Charm and Bewitch. As far as I can tell, the mind control loyalty drop thing isn't there. But again, I don't know for sure. Like I say, they're charming and putting the unit to sleep for several rounds. I didn't see the text change, but then again, if it's a really small amount, I wouldn't be able to tell anyway. So jury's still out on that one, but several things did actually get merged. So for example, Bind, Shackle, Stop did end up getting merged together into just Stop. Now again, you might immediately think, oh no, my options, but we're looking at a situation where basically, originally, Bind, Shackle, and Stop were exclusives. They would overwrite one another, meaning that you could essentially cure Shackle by giving yourself Bind, or, anything along those lines. So you needed to move, you'd Shackle yourself, that kind of thing. It was a weird thing. Technically, I'm sure as I understand it, it might not have been possible to split them. Maybe that wasn't even the intended result. Either way, just having Stop instead of trying to figure out what's Shackle, what's Bind, what's Stop, it's felt fantastic. I haven't felt like anything's lost there. Let's see what else has changed. Originally, I thought that Leaden and Slow had been merged, but they're actually 2 separate things, and this is actually kind of an interesting one. If we go over to the shop here. So, you might notice also, by the way, post-game whatever type stuff is actually available before the end here, and you can actually get some of this stuff early with some of those little challenges. But I've noticed, for example, like, yes, all debuffs are going to be on Dark, whereas all the other ones are just if you're going for those particular elements, which, again, has just felt good because they're all just in one place. Pretty much anything that you would have wanted to do is still here. They just kept with the same versions. So, for example, you can still use Sleep. You can use a bunch of extends on it to get the range of Balmy Breeze from before, but you're not getting an AoE entire team shutdown, right at the very beginning here. Stuff like Poison actually scales this time, which we already knew, but that feels absolutely wonderful. But it's interesting because, yes, technically, you have Slow off by itself, which certain units are able to use, but at the same time, if we go over to Leaden, you may notice there's no Leaden spell here, but it is available on something like the Archer. So, for example, the weighted shot actually has a additional Slow effect on there, so you can effectively double stack Slow. So that's an interesting one. Like, putting both Leaden and Slow on something, it just pretty much works like a better stop at that point. So they've even combined the ability to combine stacks of certain debuffs like that. So that's felt very interesting. Like, it's felt like Fear, for example, has seen a little bit of a nerf this time around. But again, that's just due to the system in general. It still seems to work the same way. It's just situationally, it's less, less of a thing, but it's still pretty devastating when it actually lands. Lament has been fantastic as a passive. It's just felt like it's triggering all the time. Like, Terranites, you don't have to do anything too special to have them functioning as a spellcaster right off the bat. Like, Drain Mind, Drain Health, they just work. You don't have to stack any kind of crazy penetration bonuses or whatever else to make them function. Something like Concentration allows them to be viable for some of their limited debuffs. So they basically, as with everything else, felt like playing the original version optimally, but you don't have to, jump through 20 different hoops in order to get there. Additionally, some interesting things happened with some gender-exclusive items. So, like, for example, previously you had fans as the male option. You had Caldias as the female option. They're limited by class, but they're not limited by gender this time around. So that's kind of been an interesting one. So, like, for example, like, she is still technically unable to use this this fan right here, but at the same time, if somebody were to be like a cleric or whatever else, this would be this is a situation where they would still technically be able to use it in some cases. Again, this has varied. Okay, there have been very specific cases where one thing's allowed but another thing isn't. So, like, for example, a knight would be able to use both, a tamer would be able to use both, a ninja would be able to use both, warriors and berserkers would be able to use both, but same thing with the patriarch and apparently the juggernaut and fairies, but yeah, like, for example, a paladin would only be able to use the male version. So it's interesting because it's been moved, but both versions are equally viable. So you basically have your options and can eat them too, so to speak. There was a question over how good hoplites are. Absolutely freaking fantastic. Like, this dude right here, the riot hoplite here, absolutely been carrying the team up to this point. You can stack their vitality to just hilarious numbers, so that, like, they're just opposite Juggernaut in front. It's hilarious. Actually, speaking of Juggernauts, I should, by the way, point out that Vitality doesn't seem to function as a stack on Resistance anymore, so casters can actually counter Vit builds. Juggernauts have been incredibly satisfying with the way that they rated movement in this one. Like, you can just see this dude just snaking around. It's absolutely wonderful. I actually haven't even taken a look at Patriarchs yet. I only ever got one marked for these. I haven't really been going out of my way to, but either way. So let's see, gear options. You got the sticks. I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious given. We go dagger and stick with him, I figure. It seems like a solid choice anyway. Which is funny, because technically speaking, some of the other casters can't use the Chris, which is mentioned as the spellcaster dagger, but the Patriarch can. Fun little side note there, but okay, so we go ahead and we go for that kind of thing. Still got the heavy armor caster type situation going on. Looks like we got basic overheads and missiles. No instills, though. Decent amount of debuffs on offer here. Can they actually use poison on this? I would assume they'd be able to. Yeah, they can still use poison and things. But let's see skills-wise what they got going on. So Ivory Tower, evade 2 physical attacks until next turn. Yeah, that's a little bit good. Intercession allows for negate. Irresistible, forces all units to turn in your direction. They actually... Was that even a thing before? I thought that was Gorgon only before. Recruit a reptile and concentration. So yeah, tanky caster, absolutely. Man, I'm going to have to switch over to this for one of these dudes, actually. But either way, yeah, definitely been missing out on the Patriarch. That is insanely good. Alright, so what else? So yeah, just... in general, like, I was originally threatening to make this a several hours long thing, but again, it's just insane how many things they've actually changed mechanically. What else here? So things like liches, for example. Previously, you probably didn't ever want to use salvation because it would end up taking your turn that you should have been meditating. You can just stack, again, you can stack engulf, salvation, meditate at the same time, so they functionally serve as an MP fountain for your team. I will say reflect is an absolute hazard, by the way, because it just prevents healing, but either way, you do as you will. You can pick up an early lich in Pirate's Graveyard still, so that's pretty handy there. That's actually where I ended up picking up this one. Let's see. Here we got Fridge Adventure over here. These guys are still excellent, by the way. Still got Aqua Veil, but they can do Aqua Veil and Dash and Poison Rain on the same round. They still got some of their same stuff as before. I feel like Maelstrom might potentially have an issue in my current version, because it doesn't seem to do as much as some of the other ones, but again, this is all stuff that you probably will completely not have to worry about. I'm sure you'll end up seeing more resists in the release version as well. So I mentioned this in the other one, but like tiny things like Sneaky Feet technically having a wrong description, I'm sure will end up changing, because again, they've seemingly thought of absolutely everything else. As far as finishers are concerned, it's been interesting to see that even physically crappy characters are still able to make solid use of this stuff, so they might use mental stats. Let's see what else here. Yeah, many finishers actually ended up changing where they are. So like Stone Bloom is actually your rank 20 instead of your rank 10. Something like Sun Blossom here actually. There was some particular reason that I remember it merging particularly well with fire, and I can't remember why right now. But either way, Fall Strike is pretty handy when combining with Preempt. Just kind of gives them that additional defensive layer. Stuff like Vile Wound actually, like everything sword-wise, just think, how did One Vision did it? Yeah, they did it exactly the same here. Again, I'm positive that when they were going through, they're like, oh shoot, One Vision's got some pretty great ideas. If they didn't do that, I'd be shocked, because again, the balance of this feels exactly like that. Like Rending Gale just feels like 2 attacks in a row, as it should be. Vile Wound feels like it's about 150% power over the basic hit, but also gives poison. But the poison also functions like in Venom. You've got Cherry Ronde going for the AoE. Again, it just feels like they just took it and then they just rolled with it. That is to say, the reason I'm assuming that is because, like, for example, certain items are recolored the same way the One Vision did as well. Like, for example, the Dynasty King's Mead just happens to use the exact same color. It's not a one-to-one, but it feels like they basically took a very similar direction with some of these, and oh, it feels good. It feels good. If you're curious whether this has actually held up, yes. You can still go dagger shortbow on your archer. I don't think that anyone's going to be missing the rogue, quite frankly, because anything that they could do, other classes can do just fine. Like I mentioned this before, but they come with back attack right out of the gate. Now, I wasn't sure why this was, but like, it's weird because accuracy rates in general are just way higher in this one. So it seemed like a weird early game throwaway when I was first going for it, but this actually, it's interesting because this basically just overcomes weather weaknesses, which mostly just helps in the early game, but I feel like in some cases this might actually affect parry rates. I'm not sure. I don't know if parry can trigger from behind. I don't know. Again, this is just purely speculation on my part. I have absolutely nothing to back that up, but it just feels like there's something more going on with back attack, because everything else so far, it has turned out that there's more going on. But anyway, so we'll get to that as we will.
Tactics Ogre.
Fun little note there, by the way. Every time that you load up a save, it will have a different character mention the name of the game. It's funny because most of the time it seems to be the last character that you actually interacted with. So like, it's hilarious. Like when I recruited Rudlum, it's just kind of adorable that like you load the save, it waits for a little while. It's like, oh wait a minute, oh yeah, Tactics Ogre. Like, it's neat that they put little personal touches on each of them, you know. Dude's just distracted and probably stoned half the time. But I just really appreciated that little detail. Okay, so other, I suppose we should probably cover more in-game fight type stuff, shouldn't we? So like right here, they have like they have these little challenges pretty much everywhere. The buff cards and you know, deploy a particular unit kind of thing. It feels like those are just freebies in most situations, that they're just like, okay, whatever, here you go, have some charms, whatever. But then, like, for example, if you go to the Elemental Temples, if you win any fights with no incapacitations, then you end up getting that particular element as a charm, so you can kind of guarantee that that's going to be over there. Scout is useful as always. Random spawns are still a thing in these locations. So, for example, I believe... Where was the... Actually, no, wait, this isn't the place with the one-hander. I believe the last fight was actually the one that would have had the dagger book, if I'm not mistaken. But still, all the old tricks still apply here. You can just do more or less. So let's go ahead and probably throw out. We already have a couple of units here, so we'll just, let's say, throw out these ones. Just go for something like this. But yeah, all these fights have felt great. Like, in general, while you don't obtain as much stuff in Chapter 1, it feels like you get it in about the same amount of time, as fights in general are just dramatically faster, as you probably have been able to tell so far. It feels like there's definitely more of that whole kind of speed chest type feeling, as I've been calling it. Alright, so we'll see how much of that I ended up cutting, because it got a little bit on the rambly side. But anyway, let's kind of show some of this stuff in action here, with some of the chillest music that we're going to find in any location here. Actually, gotta say, like, the music work in this, I've been loving to pieces. The fact that there's so many parts of it that like, they just added little bits of kind of orchestration where, technically speaking, they really didn't need to make it good, but man, oh man, they did great. Like, I've been mentally joking this whole time, like, man, technically speaking, they might have nerfed the bows a little bit, but good lord, those strings are on fire. Like, stuff like a Villahania, for example, just absolutely slaps like nobody's business. This one in particular, like this kind of out there dungeon theme type situation, I forget the name of this one off the top of my head, but like, the fact that they've got that little bit of Vivaldi in there, like just enough of that Vivaldi feel in there to just really make it work, like that right there. Like, look, I was a violinist growing up, you know, first was in the first violins for Allstate, and man, oh man, I just love a good string section, and they went above and beyond. There were certain bits of the music that I wasn't sure, like, why it seemed to have a little bit lower lows in certain situations, but then it just sort of started to click as more and more time went on. Like, I just started loving it more and more and more, to the point that, again, I've been listening to the PSP version on my driving playlist for a very long time, and it was just incredible to have that feeling of, like, you know what, wow, I really miss the new version when I'm driving right now. Like, I just want to hear more, I want to see more, I want to play this thing more. So it's felt just incredible to see these little, you know, little changes that they really didn't need to do. In fact, like, you know how there were so many moments in the PSP version where I was like, you know what, I really appreciate the rain sounds, and I really appreciate, you know, the fact that they put all these environmental sounds into the game. And you might be forgiven for thinking, like, oh, you know, wait a minute, I haven't heard as many rain sounds, you know, playing through this time. I saw a lot of previews, and I might not have seen the rain sounds as much. They weren't gone. They're not gone. They literally have an entire separate slider for the environmental sound effects, so if you just want to turn all the music off and just listen to that nice thunderstorm in the background while you're playing, which, by the way, I tried to get this on recording, but it wasn't playing nice, and in fact I ended up scrapping that entire video, because the whole point I was trying to make about, hey, look, you can hear the music you can hear the rain, you know, real nice in the background, was completely lost, so I just ended up, you know, skipping that one. Also, this came up a lot, but yeah, you can switch between the different languages. The voices, man, I expected to hate this, okay? I really went into this game thinking, like, oh, I'm probably just going to turn off the voices, go back to the old clickety-clacks, but every time that I go back into this thing, I want to hear the voices. I want to see how they acted these out. And in fact, even the ones where I ended up hating it, it ended up adding to the actual character of the thing. So as a good example, we can take a look at for example, Latimer. He's the knight that ends up kind of serving as one of your bosses in I forget what freaking castle. It doesn't matter. He's one of your boss guys. And looking at it at first, I was like, man, this dude sounds like a complete dick. Like, I kind of hope this guy gets slapped. And what's funny is that then I went back and I read his bio afterwards, and like, yeah, no, that him sounding like a dick was on purpose. This guy's supposed to be like a pompous douche, basically. I loved it. Like, man, I never really thought about him as anything other than, you know, the dude with the ninjas, but it ended up doing a pretty solid job. By the way, you may have noticed this guy showing up a few times before. So a few mechanics at play right here. First of all, the fact that you can use dark magic on dark units, they just can't be afflicted with dark averse anymore. So that's just kind of a neat little touch there. But the fact that you can have a long-range suppression sniper out of a Terror Knight is really something else. Like, I really would not have expected that to function half as well as it does. I literally put the cudgel on him as a frickin' beam, and yeah, no, he actually does his job. It's impressive, to say the least. That he will, well, he will do his job. If I have a unit that I know for a fact is, like, let's say a boss unit of one of these temples, and I know they're going to have some MP moves coming up, I just have him sit around the kind of edges of the map, just waiting to take advantage of that +2 range on this thing to essentially snipe it with a Drain Mind. So, yeah, again, stupid builds that you would assume would just function as a meme do actually have a means of function, and it's great. It feels wonderful. Like, I was talking earlier about these shots, for example, like having the Grenadier Fusilier over here. This is decent. I saw somebody saying that this damage was subpar earlier. Like, no, you can do some real good stuff with this. Plus it can crit. Plus it scales with Prevailing Element. Plus it scales with like, for example, like right here, we can get him a Fizz Up card. And it scales with this as well. So, for example, right there, he was doing like 220 whatever with it. We go over here, we use his lobber to throw this grenade out there. Suddenly he's doing 336 with this thing. Fantastic. Didn't knock her off the cliff, but that's fine. That would have been fantastic if it did. Like, it's just, you just have all these little combinations that you can just keep playing with it. I love it. I absolutely love it. And so, like, right here, I'm pretty positive that to some degree, I don't know what exactly is going on here, but, like, physically wise, if you were to use a light crossbow with way higher attack value, it would only do 66 to this guy, but he'd be doing 230 with his shield. You can knock heavy units back, by the way, at this point, so you don't have to use monsters to knock away monsters. Like, just, man, everywhere I turn is another mechanic to explain. Like, that really should tell you all you need to know here. But yeah, I haven't seen a single class that doesn't have something interesting that you can do with it. It doesn't feel like there's many classes that felt a little bit almost throwaway-esque in the PSP version, which was fair. It has way too many classes. I mean, I would have expected them to maybe cut some things for simplicity, but no, they improved on it. They actually took all of these old skills, they reworked them to work better. The stuff that they simplified was redundancies. So, like, instead of poison and venom, you just have poison that scales. Instead of charm and bewitch, you just have charm, but you have different, like, kind of lengths depending on how severe it was. The loyalty thing just kind of seemed to annoy people, so they just didn't do that. So either way, it just feels really good. Like, stuff like undead units still being able to come back, but you can see that they're going to be coming in at half health now, so they're not repeatedly coming back and sandbagging you. Stuff like a heal or like a revive is giving you that instant turn, but you're limited on how many that you can actually carry at any given time. You basically have to roll for meditates to have a reasonable chance to constantly be able to keep your MP up. But wait a minute, I'll just have a magic leaf spamming unit. No, you can't buy those at stores anymore. You gotta, like, those are a limited resource item. They're functionally like they were in something like FFTA 2 is probably the most solid example, where you had a bunch of like an MP reworks, but they reworked them in a smart way. Anyway, it's like right here. Okay. He can do like 838 with his saber, but because of the fact that this guy is averse and he's also weak to this thing, like, dude, what is that damage? So yeah, it's just great, just absolutely great. But in this particular case, we can develop into one of those cards instead, just finishing him off with one of these, and then having him go over there to block this tile instead. This, like, speed chess strategy porn is better than ever, and I want to point out again, these cards, they don't do what you might be thinking they're doing. They're not going to be the thing that wins you the fight. Realistically speaking, in almost all circumstances, a better move, like just putting your unit in a better position, will matter way the hell more than anything else. Now, I don't know if that was the guy with the crafting book. I don't care. He's gone now. I have not felt any need to really, worry about getting the crafting books. I've been getting what I've been getting. But realistically, like, you can tell that it's generally more, like, you can take your mid-game stuff, you can just carry it into the post-game. I've done Pirate's Graveyard, like, under-leveled, and it felt perfectly fine. I've done Palace of the Dead, and again, just felt perfectly fine. Even when you get to the bits where it scales up on you, it doesn't matter. It's a little bit harder. Which, by the way, Palace of the Dead, way harder in terms of team composition, but way more interesting as a result. Again, it's the good kind of difficulty. It's the kind where just generally they carry more options with them. So you're not getting sandbagged because you don't have enough stats. You're essentially running into a situation where you just have to counter more things at once. You have to think about your moves a lot more. Ooh, they did real good, though. It was, again, since some of the challenge runs, it's one of the first times, again, discounting some of those challenge runs, that I've actually had a fun time going through Palace of the Dead. It's the fact that they managed to make it enjoyable is really just a testament to how damn elegant this thing is. I really can't say that enough. Like, elegance is really the name of the game here. They kept those same options. They took out the redundant stuff. Like, honestly, did anyone ever run into Spendthrift? Yeah, no, you didn't. No one ran into Spendthrift. It might as well have not existed. And in the entire, like, decade plus of running this game, I have seen that debuff come up exactly once. Had no idea what it did, and then got rid of it, and then it didn't matter ever again. So instead, they're like, okay, fine, we don't need stuff like Spendthrift, we don't need to bother with some of this crazy out there stuff that no one's ever realistically going to do anything with. Like, okay, the fact that Bewitch would lower loyalty, and again, it still might as far as I'm aware, but assuming it doesn't, because again, there's so much stuff that I have not even been able to get to all of it, assuming that it doesn't, realistically speaking, is anything lost there? No, because it's one of those, it's cool that it does that, but no one's ever using that kind of situations, you know? So, like, for example, something like Dragoons, the fact that they can double stack their buffs to more or less one-shot units instead of being exclusively the things that kill those units, you know, aside from debuffs and all that kind of thing, there's a really big emphasis on speed, on being able to quickly adapt to things and just play quickly with, again, surprisingly, without losing depth. I mentioned this in the first review, but I've been saying for a long time that, like, it felt like an impossibility that they would ever be able to do something like Vagrant Story justice. But, man, off of the sheer elegance of how they pulled this off, I've actually got complete faith that they'd be able to do it. That they realistically have a shot of being able to make a Vagrant Story remake and making it awesome. Like, honestly, anything that I've seen that I thought there's no way that this could ever be remade better, all those worries have been put completely to rest with TOR here. Like, to say it's reborn is honestly not even a grandiose statement here. This is, like, legitimately, I was going and getting ready to make a save file to get ready for One Vision 1.0 coming out, and the graphics of the original actually started bugging me. Like, it was like, why is certain stuff off? Like, why is the top of their head cut off? Like, I suddenly was not used to the perspective anymore. Just off of not playing it for a couple days. That is how many subtle differences they ended up stacking up for this one. So yeah, there's that there, but you can tell, like, you can just quickly adapt to things, you can quickly swap between different builds, and just have fun with it right away. You don't have to go grind for any extended period of time. You don't have to, have knowledge of 50,000 different esoteric mechanics that nobody will ever think of. Alright, I'm actually going to go for a bit of a different thing here, because he could attack twice, but he could just go for that instead, saving his evade so that he doesn't get knocked off the cliff. But yeah, they've just made it far more understandable this time around, as you can probably tell here. The fact that you've got casters being able to functionally engage in melee in an actual meaningful way in a lot of cases. Like, for example, Pressure Whirl here is a interesting situation where before you really wouldn't use anything other than raining blows, but in this particular case, if, for example, there's an AoE and you have two casters, one of them can set up a Pressure Whirl to essentially reduce the, well, increase magic defense versus an AoE area, whereas, like, they just suddenly use their staff for a specific debuff instead of a spell, and then you just follow that up with, you know, whatever you wanted to follow it up with. So, feels fantastic there, and there we go, another example of he's taken 2 strength and ups, and he's attacking somebody that's weak to what he's doing. So it feels good there. So, like, Earth is weak to wind. You've got Lightning being weak to Earth. I think it's Water's weak to Lightning because the Water Temple was an absolute breeze. But seeing units type matched and stuff like that, just, it feels good. It just feels so nice. Personally, I would recommend keeping the elemental, kind of like elemental flavored bars like this on at all times. It just looks very pretty and feels really good. It's really something else. But yeah, as you can see, it just feels smooth. Every fight just feels properly balanced. The level cap thing doesn't feel like a gimmick whatsoever. True to some degree, it's a sanity check mechanic, wherein, like, you're going in and it's like, okay, you know, you can grind this much and you're not going to completely stat crush the other guy. True, to some degree, that's part of it. But at the same time, you have to consider that it's a lot more than that as well. Because it's essentially stopping you at just the right moment, where if you're playing well, you get an advantage, but if you're not playing well, you still have to actually learn the game in order to progress. You don't have those constant misunderstanding moments like we had with the PSP version, where somebody ends up going and, you know, playing dozens of hours of the thing and then still has no idea how to actually properly build a unit. Also, by the way, Dragon Scale is, stuff like Dragon Scale and Steadfast and Phalanx. Ooh, I love how they read even those. Like, Dragon Scale makes it to where dragons are a legitimate threat, to where if they have scale on, you have a reason to have the scale removal ability, simply because they are a major problem with the you know, really high damage and reflect on them. So there's a legitimate reason to actually keep that around. Stuff like Gorge and Key functioning as an automatic ends up finally giving that a use as well. Something like Phalanx Steadfast is not a thing in the early game anymore. It is a late game thing at the point where you actually have something to deal with it. So you're not sitting there like, well, I guess we'll just wait until Phalanx wears off. Can't do anything about this boss until then. Instead of that, you have, like, sure, you can just use poison right off the bat. Casters will still be able to get around some of that stuff. The fact that Steadfast is not available until the end game means that you can shield bash them out of the way. It's so elegant. Like, I cannot possibly emphasize enough how freaking elegant that is. Also, we're just going to go backwards and hit this guy with a 1700 just for the hell of it. But as you can see right here, like, sure, technically in this case it's a little bit more intense because we've gotten the level cap higher than this location has, but even when we were coming in here lower level than these guys, it still was perfectly doable. Again, it just feels like they've taken that golden bubble from the original, just expanded it out absolutely everywhere. And it feels really solid. Like, I really cannot say enough good stuff about this remake. When I was saying in the short version of the review that this is, in my opinion, the finest SRPG ever made, that is no exaggeration, without any question whatsoever. To my mind, this is the cream of the crop. You've got a hell of a lot of maps to go through. They're interesting maps. You've got a ton of interesting units. They're easy to build with. You have all the information just available to you. You can just play and feel it out without any issues. You've got the physics systems that are fun to play around with. You've got you know, all the kind of different ability systems that are fun to play around with. It's all completely understandable. It's got, hell, if you're here for the story, it's got plenty of story. If you're here for the world, it's got plenty of world. It's just so good. They've even kept a lot of the little changes, like, for example, these guys being classed as different stuff. So, like, for example, we would bring our anti-beast Dragoon here. I think is the right one that I put in. Yes. Do I still have her as anti-beast? Yes, I do. So, it feels good. Not sure we're going to replace this guy with a second Dragoon, which, by the way, like, you can just pick up units and use them right away. You don't have to go through any song and dance. You can just You can just play. You can just enjoy. You don't have to. You don't have to just struggle to actually enjoy the game. You just play and enjoy.
I am servant to Vasa, goddess of earth.
I love the voices.
You, who would become a true oracle, must face a trial.
Okay, all well and good. I have to say, the water one, the octopus guy, they gave him a weird accent, and after looking at the portrait for the octopus for a while, it was just like, man, they specifically were staring at this portrait in order to get this accent just right, didn't they? It just felt so good. But yeah, just like before, you can still do a lot of, if you know how to play well, you can still do a lot of the old rushdown strategies very well. Like right here, I know for a fact that this guy's going to be Earth, so I know I'm going to probably be looking to stack up Canopus as much as I can. I believe he's out of stock of his plumes right now. Yes. So I'm just going to see if I can pick up any cards with him along the way. If not, whatever. He's just going for Cyclone versus this guy. I'm going to go get my my Beast units in position there. Try not to... I'm going to hopefully trigger Beast Bait on the way over and hopefully be able to bring some of those over to the boss, because I've got no interest in fighting the rest of this stuff right now. So you can still do stuff like that. But, like, again, the fact that it's all been made so much more understandable that you don't have those moments of, oh, crap, let me restart, I forgot something. Like, you can just go and go and go and go, and it's like, oh, I forgot something. It's a little bit suboptimal, whatever, screw it. And then you just kind of keep going. Feels wonderful, man. Just really, really feels wonderful. It just flows beautifully. Front, and just like front to back, it just flows like a dang river of all kinds of different features. Just feels great. So crits actually work a little bit differently in this one, in that it actually doubles your damage. So you might have missed, for example, something along the lines of like, wait, why would double shot matter if you've got something like you know, tremendous already doubling your damage? But then you have cases like engulf showing up on your archers to extend their range, and then you can combine it in still with that extra range, and then you combine it with, like, let's say a Slayer skill or a crit card, and then combine it with a tremendous as well. And so you're just like stacking and stacking and stacking all these different things up. So you're stacking things in the middle of the fight instead of stacking things, you know, hours ahead of time, not knowing what you're going to run into. So, like, most of that stuff was mostly fun for people after they already knew the systems. Now you can just kind of play and feel and just be like, just use the units that you want to use until you're finally ready to go do the cool stuff, you know? Not going to end up getting left behind for weird reasons. And if you want to just kind of stack crush a unit, you just save up those charms and you end up building up units for particular things. Like, I wanted to make Evan over here into the ultimate unmovable tank, so I've been feeding him every strength and vit card that I can come across, just to specifically, you know, see what we can do with that guy. And he has become a complete unmovable wall. But, like, something like, I've been joking for a while that this game feels like Knight of Lotus 2 in a way, because a lot of the balance, or a lot of the damage feels like it's sanity checked somewhere along the background, so you'd seem to get some diminishing returns, but not really. So for example, all those stack ups on that guy mean that he's really good with finishers, and his base damage is slightly higher, but he's still not doing insane numbers. But you might be saying, wait a minute, maybe he's just using dexterity. Oh no, I got dexterity up on him too. It was increasing it by about the same amount. So it feels like certain things, like for example, like crossbows or daggers or whatever else, have a certain sanity check factor to them. Anyway, again, we're gonna need to wait for the modders to do their thing before we know for sure what exactly is going on there. Either way, feels good. You have a lot of situations like this where, you know, you can just kind of shred through enemy teams under the right circumstances. The fact that your AoEs all end up sparking at once feels fantastic for like the tier 2 spells and things like that. They just like pop down and all 4 numbers fly up in the air. It just it makes me happy. It gives you happies in the strategy gut, as I as I always said about Knight of Lotus there. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit those ones with the heal real quick. Technically healed one dude, but, you know, damaged another. But yeah, I never would have expected them to nail this half as hard as they did. For the life of me, I still don't know how they pulled this off, because it's seriously like they went through every single detail of the original and just sat there taking notes, like, how can we make this absolutely perfect? It's like, but sir, isn't this a bit of an insane project? No, just do it. Just all of the, you know, all the team just sitting there giggling in the background like we're just gonna blow everyone away as much as we can. Like, I know for a fact that there's probably more layers of just newer craftable stuff in the background. I'm sure there's entirely new stuff for world mode. I know the whole relic system is kind of its own thing right now that I can't even, can't even probably fathom what the hell it's even up to right now. But either way, you know what? I'll get to that stuff as we get to it. But I just wanted to, do the whole intense mechanical ramble thing. Oh, by the way, there we go. There's a Princess's Whim doing its thing. So it actually did manage to do something. Again, bit of a small miracle, hilariously enough. Anyway, we'll just go ahead and nuke that real quick. I think I already mentioned this, by the way, but a little bit late to be mentioning the script this late into it. But as far as I can tell, no, the script is actually identical to the PSP version. They've cleaned up a lot of the writing. They've given it voice lines that have been very solid for the most part. They've ended up. How do I even describe this one? They basically just ended up improving a lot of the sort of human feel to a lot of the scenes. Like they've given little little grunts and things like that in situations where you really wouldn't expect it to be a thing. Like, for example, a certain scene where, like, a knight knocks down a door, they added, like, the thuds and grunts of him hitting the door, whereas before it was just like they ran into it a couple times and then they just ran through. So that, like, it's been great to see little bits of detail like that all over the place. There were those moments where they would suddenly move their head or whatever else, and they added, little sounds to that as well, just to kind of indicate, like, oh yeah, they're thinking, they're being a human kind of thing. Just, again, improving the human feel of this whole thing. Little fun mechanical things still remain, as they always did, like you saw right there, of being able to train a skill defensively. Oh man, she is not feeling like meditating much this time. The fact that your wizards end up... So, I mentioned in the earlier review there that it took a friggin' math genius to kind of cover some of these mathematical aspects of the whole thing. The reason that I mention this is one of the few things that I actually kind of legitimately enjoyed about Triangle Strategy was the fact that the wizards felt like they were getting tired. Like, the writing on that thing was appalling, the world building was, like, it dropped the ball 2 seconds in, but as far as everything else goes, as far as the actual, like, in-game feel went, the fact that wizards got tired was a nice little flow, and they nailed that here too. Alright, needed a little bit of a coffee break there. But just those little moments where it's like, okay, it feels like, this caster's tired, but I don't know for how long. I know. The initial thought would be like, wow, that sounds like it might be a little bit annoying because you don't know when your stuff's going to come in. It feels better than it sounds. Like, it has constantly surprised me with, like, okay, I know I should be annoyed at the fact that she doesn't have MP right now, but it basically creates this thing where, like, if they have MP, wizards are very consistent. However, archers are always consistent. Gunners are always consistent. They're always going to hit their targets. So what's your choice going to be? Are you going to be more consistent for your damage, or are you going to be more consistent for your availability? Like, having an item specialist is great, but they're expensive and you're limited in terms of the numbers of items. At the same time, it would be pretty neat if you were to go, like, let's say, pick up a revive or a complete resurrection spell. Fantastic, but it takes a while for them to be able to charge it up. It's, again, inconsistent. It's not always there when you want it. So it's interesting because it just adds to that controlled chaos, because it's not like you won't get it. It might take a little longer. It might be available immediately. You don't know. That's the factor there. Oh, and I love it. I absolutely love the way that feels. Alright, there we go. Let's just go ahead and checkmate this guy. Beautiful.
Magnificent.
Exactly. I really should start saying magnificent instead of beautiful. But as you might have been able to tell while just watching this, those cards just blend into the background. They're just another little thing to think about. You're just like, well, do you want to, maybe skip your turn, go over here a little bit, figure out what's going on over there? Oh, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice. It's nice. It's nice. I want to see if Armorcraft does something different this time, or is it just the helmet still? Let's see. First of all, I should probably go ahead and restock on stuff, huh? Before we're running out of revives forever. By the way, I have noticed that the Blessing Stone economy is way better this time around. You can't just infinite farm for them. At least not easily. Like, before you had the Farampa thing, where you would just go into Farampa and you'd be like, well, you know, I'll just farm these forever. You run around with 99 stones. You're not just limited in how many you can carry, but the fact that your money's more limited actually, like, it's funny because it doesn't feel limiting, but it feels like you're kind of missing just enough, like just enough, where it, you know, becomes a little bit of a factor. All right, let's see. We got access to that. We got worm scale. And there's actually a reason to make it this time. What do we need to make this, though? Can I make it? Okay, so I need the mask plus 1 to make that. I need this. So let's go ahead and make that. Can I make that? Yes. So there's actually a reason to make this stuff, because it's not just dropping left, right, and center. Let's go. I can't afford to make those yet. I can't afford to make those yet. Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. There's actually a reason they used a mask this time. Who'd have thunk it? I've gone through Farampa maybe 3 or 4 times, and it feels like, again, you're getting just enough of whatever you need. So, it feels nice there. Let's see how good this stuff is. I mean, I just love the fact that I can still keep using the Scorpion and still keep making good use of its poison effect into Chapter 4. It just feels wonderful to be able to just find a weapon you like and be like, you know what, I'm just sticking with this, whatever, you know, good enough. Actually, come to think of it, can I make worm scale sleeves, I wonder? Okay, we're gonna lower this real quick. Does this still give me what I want it to give me? Go to this guy, let's stack him for even more defense. I'll just end up making more later, but whatever. Alright, let's put you on there. Man, that is a lot of vitality. Like, especially in this balance, this vitality is pretty hefty. But yeah, then again, I actually... Interesting, so to get the full dragon scale effect then, I wonder, I guess I have to go through all the elemental temples and that kind of thing. For some reason I was sure I ended up picking up at least one of those, but clearly I didn't. Either way, so, as you can probably tell, voice is given out at this point. Hopefully you get the general idea. Like, hopefully this helped to at least carry you over a little bit until release hits, because as you can tell, it's quite the experience. It's quite the game. It is quite the thing, and yeah, I have no qualms about saying that this is the finest SRPG in existence. This has by far become my favorite thing. Like, even after playing the PSP version for so long, it has made so many improvements that it's legitimately kind of difficult to go back even. Like, not that I won't. I still plan to cover the hell out of One Vision. I just mean it's very striking to have that sudden moment of like, man, this just looks different. And I know that at least one person's going to bring this up. Yes, you can turn off the voice of the shop guy. Like, I know somebody's gonna complain about that yet, but he's all friendly. He says hi every time you meet him. But okay, yeah, my voice is completely given out. So, y'all have a good one. I can't wait to start doing guides on this. Probably by the state of the party, you can guess what the first one's going to be. I mean, as far as I can tell, this part hasn't probably changed, but I have noticed... Oh, shoot, Oh, man, I didn't cover that. Okay. I mentioned earlier that in order to make those grenades, you'd have to use some of those limited crystals that you've got on hand, right? So there is more to it than that, too. If you want to make orbs this time, you actually gotta use glass pumpkins for it. So I've just casually found 4 laying around. They feel like they drop way more commonly this time. But it's just great that, yeah, you can make orbs. You just have to use very limited resources in order to be able to do them. Like, they seemingly thought of everything, and I love it so much. But anyway. Alright, I should attempt to go quiet for just a moment. Y'all have a fantastic release. It's awesome, man. I just love that they actually nailed it, and I can't wait to see what else they're going to do. You have a great one. Take care.